But there you go.
Right, we need to pause now whilst I go and throw up, and then we'll be back with round 12 of Super League. So we jump into round 12 now, Easter Monday's game, the second round of Easter fixtures, the increasingly contentious Easter programme, and the second round of games saw an average attendance of only 7,294. Actually, it ranks it 9th out of the 12 rounds so far. So from the highs of Friday to the close to lows of Monday. Is this a suitable time just to touch on the Easter programme, maybe the way it all works out, the appetite for it, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I think so. I do think that we are spreading ourselves too thinly with 2 games. I know that's the common trope that you always get on the Monday and Tuesday of after a kind of an Easter program, but I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't feel. It feels like after the Lord Mayor's show, doesn't it? Like this morning, for example, I fully expected when I bought my League Express that it would have both rounds in it. But no, it just has Friday's games in it, and I kind of think, well, that's a bit of an opportunity missed, isn't it? And I don't know. It feels slightly like, and it's slightly because of the fixtures are, they're not the first choice games potentially, and I don't know. I'm leaning towards a round spread out over the weekend rather than some of the poor fare. You can't say it was the best stuff that we put on Sky on Easter Monday, was it?
I've always been a big fan of 2 games over Easter from a supporter's point of view. I enjoy top and tail in the weekend with games of rugby, but I get what you're saying, and I think maybe we need to think about if there's a different way to do it. The player welfare angle that gets played up and all of that. Yeah, I get it. I do get it to an extent, but then, like down under, they have people playing State of Origin on a Wednesday and then backing up on a Friday or a Saturday sometimes. More likely a Saturday or a Sunday. But in the NRL, and when you're talking about the most intense competition there, but they'll have had the week off before. So here, what we're asking our players to do is pretty much play 4 games in 16, 17 days usually.
Yeah.
And
it's the round before and the round afterwards, isn't it? That's the trouble.
It's the whole caboodle. Yeah. And also, a couple of touches on the crowds. I mean, Huddersfield didn't have a brilliant crowd, but it was against London, so I'm not sure you'd be shocked. Hull KR, 7,000. We'll get to that. That's an okay crowd, but not a high crowd by their estimations. You wonder if the results of both sides on the Friday flattened that one down. If both had won, would it have been 9,000, say 10,000? Salford Wigan was actually about 500, almost 500 down on the first game between these two sides in way better weather conditions. After Salford had pulled off a great... I don't want to sound like one of those people having a go at Salford's crowds, because Salford's fans, apart from 2 fucking pricks at the end of the game who came out looking for fights, but Salford's fans, the actual decent people that go and watch Salford, I have a lot of time for, and I like the club as well, and I like the way Ian Watson plays his rugby. I like the way their players are engaging with their communities. Jackson Hastings at the forefront, but not just Hastings, to be honest. There's so many things I like about Salford, but I don't buy into the stadium where it is a huge problem either, because that's been addressed slightly with the road layouts. You can get buses. It's not that far a walk from Eccles in reality. It's a mile and a half maybe, 2 miles at max.
It took me about 30 minutes. Yeah.
So 2 miles then.
Yeah.
It just like excuses. It feels like for people not to go. I just think there's not enough people who want to go, and it's a terrible, terrible shame. Because I would say there were 1,600 Wigan fans at that game, so only 2,300 to 400 Salford fans max. St Helens against Hull FC, just over 11,000. I think that's about the crowd you'd expect at that game. So
yeah, maybe a bit up, but not massive.
Fair enough there. Wakefield Leeds, Wakefield don't
That's
get great
more.
crowds. They don't get many crowds pushing 7,000. This was 6,700. But was it good enough? I don't think so. The only one that really stands out, and the only one that looked full, was thankfully the only one on TV.
True enough, yeah.
Was Catalan versus Castleford, over 10,000 there. Catalan's highest crowd of the season, and it looked good. It looked full.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of, part of me just thinks that if we planned in a rotation, so you had a home game every other year, because obviously the clubs, like for example, the 5,000 tickets that Saints sold on Good Friday, they get something for that, don't they? There's like they make a percentage of that. So
a quarter of the money made, I think.
Yeah. So obviously it's not something you. It's some, but if you know about it, you can plan for it. And for me, I just think
if we
it
did
would
it
be
properly, I would revenue share more.
Well, yeah, exactly. But even in the current market, to me, it just feels like maybe the 2 games has had its day. But there you go.
Are the fans saying? I've been at Wigan crowds on Easter Monday where there's been 15,000 plus. So there's been times where it has been still great, but then the game that day was 80 odd 6, I think it was. So I won't mention the opponents for you.
I've no idea who that could have been.
No, but yeah. It's an interesting conversation to have, and everyone's having it. So,
we'll see.
I'm still a little bit reluctant to move away from it, but it does feel like it's time for a rethink. You definitely think it's time for a rethink, then?
I would, I'd say maybe try it for 2 years, so you get a chance for each team to have one home game at Easter. Vary your days, move it about a bit, see what works, and then we'll review it after that. So for me, yes, let's try something else.
Well, you could still have someone on a Thursday night on TV.
This is what I mean.
Derbies,
you'd have a Thursday, Friday.
Traditional derbies we've got left in Super League that feels like Good Friday has to be the day that they're played, sort of thing. So Wigan Saints and Hull and the Hull derby, you can still back those up against each other and put them both on TV on the Friday. You could have, say, Warrington. They're doing great things on home games on Saturdays. If Warrington or Salford had a Saturday home game, and then you can still have Catalans on the Monday if they're still pulling in big crowds on Easter Mondays. That could still be their Easter game day, and you could have all the games televised as well as another opportunity.
That was the thing for me. Yeah, you could make it a big event. You could make it the whole weekend, and Easter, rugby league is Easter is rugby league, and rugby league is Easter type thing. Which I think the gap. I think the Saturday Sunday where you kind of twiddling your thumbs breaks the flow. Personally,
so you don't lose the Easter being synonymous with rugby league, but at the same time you address some of the other concerns. It's something to consider. Okay.
We'll see.
The first game we've got to talk about from round 12 then was Huddersfield hosting the London Broncos. It finished with an unusual scoreline, 24 points to 19 in favour of the home side, Huddersfield. 12-8 it was at half-time to the home side. 4,464 were there. Marcus Griffiths was the referee and a man under some scrutiny. Yes, it turns out. So, in terms of the stats, lots of the main stats were very close, but the ones that weren't all favoured Huddersfield. 3 fewer errors, 3 fewer penalties conceded, and 5 more breaks. Individually, Jerry McGilvery, 2 tries, 182 metres, 2 clean breaks. Jordan Turner, 1 try assist, 105 metres, and Innes Senior, 1 try assist and 144 metres for him. Reece Williams on the other side. This was the game where he had the long breakaway try that I remember watching. 1 try and 200 metres for him. Kieran Dixon 159 metres on the other wing. Eddie Batty 118 metres. Luke Yates 49 tackles, 14 of which were marker tackles. So big defensive return from him. And we have a couple of fan views on this one.
We do, yes. So Paul Chamberlain says... Sorry, go on.
I'm sure they differ.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if you can guess who's a fan of who. So Paul Chamberlain says, brave performance that came down to 2 late disputed calls. Firstly, McGilvery knocks on from a play of the ball and the ref calls it back for a scrum to Giants, even though the tackle was complete after an initial knock-on by London. Giants then score off the last tackle in the next set with 3 minutes left. Then London think they score under the post from the last play, but the ref disallows the try. Ho hum.
And then Mark W says, after getting crucified at Leeds, this should have been our resurrection. Instead, it felt more like waking up hungover to find you've shat the bed. Poor skill levels, no confidence, and no energy from both sides. The sooner we scrap Easter Monday games, the better. So, obviously, we don't know tons about these games. We haven't had as much chance to read up on them and stuff like that. I've only seen brief match reports and the Super League show, which thankfully managed to do a same day turnaround. And
yes. That's where my comments come from as well. So
in terms of star players, I'm kind of basing it off the stats and the result in a way. And 2 tries, including the winner. I think you have to sort of say Jerry was the main man for the Giants in that regard. Cruz Leeming setting up his try was a very risky at that stage of the game play when there was other options to kind of get to golden point and stuff. But well done to him for picking that play out, because it was a really good pass. And then highlight moments. I suppose it could have been the fairly long drop goal that Morgan Smith kicked, but it came to mean nothing. So instead I'll pick out the Scott Griggs try with the great Insigne assist, which was, I think, towards the back end of the first half for the Giants. A nice breakaway down the left by the young winger and the old fullback supported on the inside. Now, I've read a lot of conspiracy theories from London fans who didn't attend the game. Paul is not included in this. He seems quite philosophical about it, which is very magnanimous of him. But some other London fans who didn't attend the game on Twitter were basically calling out the clearly in place RFL bias against the small clubs, because Huddersfield, as we know, are a huge club. Definitely. And you know, everyone in the north seems to think the Super League have done everything they can to get London into Super League and keep London in Super League over the years, and then everyone in the south seems to think that they've done everything to wage war against the London side. And let's be honest, the truth is probably neither of those two things.
Yes.
But I would say the footage I've seen of the Alex Walker no try at the end of the game, it looks like a try from what we saw, but we didn't see very much. The reason I say it looks like a try is because Marcus Griffiths appears to have ruled it out for a knock-on. And it's hard to see a knock-on on the footage. And also, Griffiths was at the wrong side of the play. He was looking over the player. So
yes,
again,
he was.
Hard to see. But he had a better view. Him in the in-goal judge had much better views than anyone with the camera, although I think Alex Walker would have had the best view. Still, though, the best reason to claim a try, if you know what I mean, as well. But I think that one was probably harsh. And coming right as it did on the hooter... and right under the stick, so it would have been a converted try, you would think. Tough one to take for the Broncos. However, it does sound like they were lucky to not see a player leave the field earlier in the game to a tackle on Jordan Turner, which sounds a bit like some of the other ones we've been talking about. But I've not seen it, so I can't say any more than just what I've read. But there was a period where he was down after I think a late hit. I'm not sure. I might be wrong. And there's also a Cruz Leeming no try in the first half. What I would always say to that, to counter what I was saying about the London angle, is the decisions made at the end of the game are always far more crucial than the ones made at the start or the middle of the game. So in terms of the outcome of the game, because obviously the no try situation for London would have changed the outcome of the game, but it seemed like that was the controversial moment. So it sounds like London had a bit of a tough break on the road here, and maybe if they could have, I'm not sure, maybe if they scored some tries rather than kicked penalties in the first half, might have been a different story. You know, if they'd have taken some risks when they were on top earlier on. But Huddersfield toughed it out, and a big win for them.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen. Like you, I have freeze framed it, and there is definitely a shot that you could say where Alex Walker is still in the field of play. The ball is definitely, you can't see his hand on the ball, but you can see that the ball is kind of under his torso.
Yeah. So
you could argue that is downward pressure. Had he already knocked it on by that point, because the ball, you couldn't see the ball from where the camera's situated, possibly. Again. But that was freeze framing again, seeing something on replay, the ref and the in-goal